Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for attending this webinar today. My name is Rebecca Gooch. I'm the Director of Quality Training and Development here at NCC Education. I am joined by my colleague, our Product Development Manager, Hassanein Ali, who has helped and supported the development of these additional units to our Level 3 International Foundation Diploma for Higher Education Studies. So welcome. We are going to get started and give you an overview of the webinar today as well. If at any point you have any questions, please pop them into the chat, but there will be an opportunity at the end of this webinar to ask and us to answer any queries that you have or may have about the additional creative arts units. So if you just bear with me one moment. So welcome everybody again. This is an introduction into the creative art units that have been developed over the past, I'd say, 3 or 4 months to create an additional pathway to our Level 3 International Foundation for Higher Education Studies. So what we're going to discuss today is an introduction to what they are, teaching strategies and best practices for delivering these units, in particular some key pointers, key focus, and we can answer any questions in terms of that at the end. Key assessment requirements and any guidelines that we offer in terms of the global assignments for each unit. And just a reminder of the resources available on the VLE and Quartz to support both teaching and learning when these units being started delivered at your centre. So I think some questions that we were obviously expecting and having from our centres is why have we created a creative arts pathway? I think it's really important for any awarding organisation to keep up to date with their portfolio of products. But in particular for these specialist units, we were looking to respond to the industry demand and any skills gaps that these units will create and create those progressions for students. Also kind of a market demand from feedback from our centres and students alike. Catering to a really diverse student interest and career paths. I think we recognise our Level 3 IFD caters from many different pathways and many different progressions to undergraduate courses. So we want to add to this to create a more richer progression pathway into different career sectors. Alignment with higher education trends as well. So we know that undergraduate courses in the creative arts sector are really well received. They are very popular in terms of progressions and do offer, once completion of degrees, what we call in the UK in particular, the hidden job market. So the hidden crafts in terms of creative arts and the opportunities they present for students also. That leads on nicely to student employability. So how are we creating those pathways for students and ultimately how we are helping them to develop that portfolio into applying to university for an undergraduate course in these particular topics and subjects. And here at NCC, we really want to be innovative, creative, and keep the curriculum current. I'm sure you appreciate we've had a full or many redevelopments this past year, and we are having many positive responses, in particular for our IFD programme also. When creating these units, we have consulted industry experts and specialist subject content developers who have developed the content and the assignments and the assessment criteria also, who are either in industry, academia, or both in some instances that we have approached. And many content developers and reviewers are a dual professional when it comes to creating content and also still being up to date and current with the curriculum that is offered. So as we were developing these units, our content developers have really honed in on the skills and the development of what universities will be looking for to create an autonomous learner. And these include critical thinking and problem solving skills, which the level 3 IFD, both core and elective units, do lend itself with those skills there, in particular research skills for higher education study and university study. Communication expression, so the creative arts sector really is a multitude of multidisciplinary skills. So we want to make sure that that is delivered to students and those skills are enhanced with these units alongside the core units as well. Technical software and development. So you will see from the teaching and learning materials, the lecture guides and assessments that some units, in particular digital art, will need some software development. Now, we have purposely included that in the software that our centres might need to have, but you also may want to have additional software development within your centre for a particular job market as well, and that's absolutely fine. We have catered for specifics, but also it can be broad as well with those software and development techniques. Innovation. Many of the creative arts sector individuals are entrepreneurs, started their own business, and some obviously are part of a company as well, but we encourage the innovation and creativity on these art units for the learners also. Interdisciplinary learning, and what we mean by that is that there's a lot of crossover in terms of how a student learns. So whether that's peer support, whether that's feedback from the tutor, whether that's group projects, individual, formative and summative assessment. So how they are learning and acquiring these skills, knowledge and application is really important for these units. And also portfolio development. Each one of those units that we will go over shortly has a portfolio. What we have enabled is that they have distinct portfolios for the unit that they are able then to present to any interviews at university that may ask for portfolio evidence to gain entry. And that's really important that the students can demonstrate that, the process and the end products of what they have produced at the end of each unit, week by week. Other elements that we've looked at in terms of progressions and articulations, we have now gone to our universities that we are partnered with, but also that approve our progression routes at IFD to look at where they can progress to, and we will confirm that in due course. But from the feedback that we've had from our centres, students and developers, there is a real breadth of career progressions, in particular in taking this pathway to a university and completing the degree element and then into industry. So some of those ones that we touch on are creative designers, film and video editors, digital artists, animators, creators, and really, again, to highlight the creative entrepreneurs. So in terms of the why and the approach to these units, we know that it's a very fruitful job market. We know that it contributes, from the research that is available to us, 3% of global GDP and generates around 30 million plus jobs worldwide. So this, for students in particular, this is a rich pathway into undergraduate study at a university, whether that's internationally, whether that's in the UK, or whether that's in country also. So moving into the creative arts units one by one, and that's what we're going to go through now. We're going to look at the teaching pedagogy, we're going to look at the assessment and clarify how that approach is recommended in terms of the teaching and learning materials provided to you already available on our VLE. So in terms of creative arts units, the focus were initially on these 3 units that pertains to art, design, fine art and digital art. So the art and design general, the purpose why we put general there is that it is quite a broad spectrum of techniques where it's very exploratory and covers various techniques in media. Fine art really just concentrate on traditional artist practice like painting, sculpture, with a focus on creativity and expression and those real critical thinking skills. And digital art unit emphasis digital tools, software art, and include digital painting, 3D modeling, and animation as well. So real 3 distinct units with distinct learning categories as well. Just a brief overview there. Each unit is 20 credits, and the method of assessment is 100% global assignments, which I will go into shortly as well. So the first unit that we're going to kind of look at is Art and Design General. The objectives of this unit is the development of visual communication skills, exploration of different artists, media and techniques, and continuous assessment through their portfolio development on these techniques and the process involved in that. Some key topics are drawing and painting techniques, introduction to design principles, and use of colour and composition. The pedagogical approach to art and design, some key elements there. It's a very holistic approach. In all these units, it's very holistic and lends itself to developing the independence of students throughout. Topics build on technical skills across materials, methods, and contextualised knowledge in art and design. As learners develop their art and design skills in the topics, they need to be encouraged to be independent and allowed to kind of mix materials and methods to encourage that exploration and really promote autonomy through the students as well. Early topics, from probably topics 1 to 4, are there to experiment and be adventurous, and for students to take risk in certain mediums, media, and different techniques that they learn as well. Really hone in the facilitation of research skills, so researching artists, techniques, using the tools available in the classroom to them to really develop that skill set. And the complementary element to that is that they would either have already completed or alongside maybe are doing the core units of the research and study skills for university studies. So it does complement that facilitation of research. The lecturers that are available, such as the topics available to everybody in the teaching and learning materials, need to be delivered kind of in the classroom or in a studio where students can be supported in terms of they can practice their content that's being covered in the topics for that exploration as well. So in terms of the reflective practice elements, is that students should be encouraged to constantly reflect at the end of each lesson on what they have done. So in terms of a teaching and learning approach, it's good to have a plenary activity of 10 to 15 minutes maybe to have the learners reflect and keep that reflective log of what they've done after either each lesson or even given an extension task or homework to complete for the next week as well. Real encouragement on peer feedback. So, activities are in there and designed to reflect and support each other in terms of the creative approach for students and what they may take. Real approach and ongoing feedback. So that's not just peer, that's from tutors as well. And that can be in the classroom or within private study that is outlined there. And a real key here is we're really encouraging that self-assessment, so that self-critique, self-reflection on the techniques that are being covered and what the students are doing and as part of the process of that development as well. Topics 9, 10, 11 and 12 are all aimed towards a global assignment, but I will go over that in the next few slides as well. So what, in terms of the art design approaches, topics 1 to 4 is about that exploratory creative side to explore the techniques, mediums, and what the students want to do. Topics kind of 5, 6, 7, and 8 are about the application, about the doing of the process and what they want to create for their final piece. Topics 9, 10, 11 are aimed to support the global assignments in terms of giving learners an opportunity to start formulating their portfolio and the evidence around that as well. In terms of assessment for the Art Design General Unit, it's based on a project and it consists of 4 main tasks. This includes theme selection, experimentation, final outcome production, and a presentation and evaluation. So you want to think of this as a process from start, middle, and end for your students. The assignments and those tasks constitute to this contributes to 100% of the final grade. And this is a repeating global assignment. So this is from winter 2024 for autumn 2025. This is already available on our Quartz website under live assessments as well. So the assignment is ready for students and centres to start undertaking also. In terms of assessment, it is really important to provide the assignments at the beginning of the unit, so students are fully aware what is expected on the assignment. Obviously not mark scheme, that is something that you will be using as tutors at the end of the evaluation. But as you go through, you can provide formative feedback for your students as they work through the task as well. So task 1 is about theme selection, initial ideas and research. And that is about that exploratively experimental phase for students to really develop the mediums, develop the techniques in conjunction with guidance for the teaching and learning materials. For this task, it's really important to encourage students to select a theme that resonates kind of with them from the assignments that produced as well. Emphasise the importance of research through both primary and secondary sources. And it's important to develop and monitor the mind maps, the mood boards, and they're effectively exploring what they want to achieve. Some key points here for the assessment and the marking is, looking at the assess of depth and relevance for the research that is being conducted. Evaluate the creativity and originality of ideas from this research as well. And what's really important in terms of assessment and marking is ensuring that students have linked their research to contextual art and design practices as well. So there's some key elements there for task 1. For task 2, as stated, it is a process. So it's about the experimentation and development. So again, encouraging students to work with and experiment with 2D and 3D material techniques, regularly reviewing students' process, so whether that's through private study or in classroom feedback. And that doesn't have to be from yourself as lecturers, that can be from peers and their own self-assessments that they should be encouraged to do as well. And really important to provide that constructive feedback for students to kind of formulate their ideas and reflect on their artistic methods. In terms of kind of guidance for assessment and marking for task 2, it's really looking for that clear documentation, experimentation, and that log that the students will be keeping. And it's assess the students' ability to kind of apply that. So apply what they've researched and the knowledge they've acquired to refine the materials and methods. And again, the constant evaluation of how well the students have incorporated feedback into their work also. And that's really important. A really key thing for all of these units is that reflective practice and evaluation. Task 3 is about the final outcome and feedback. So guiding students with their final kind of projects and with, comparing that to their initial project ideas, looking to produce that high quality work, whether it's drawing, painting, sculpture, or any other medium that they may choose or you may approach. And it's really important that students keep detailed records of their kind of final production as well as they go into the final task, because they will use that in their presentation and evaluation for task 4. So they can take everything that they have done from the very first lesson straight until those final task 4 hours that will be determined by you as a centre. So they can take everything in with them to produce their final presentation and evaluation. So leading on then to task 4, which is about that presentation and evaluation. This is a 15-hour supervised kind of in-class production of what they produce. So it's not like a local examination where there's invigilation there as well, but it has to be supervised by a tutor. And 10 hours of that consists with developing their final project. You can split that up across 2 weeks, where you may go, right, well, we're going to do 5 hours this week, 5 hours next week in terms of development, and then 5 hours then to actually compose their presentation and their PowerPoint that they will then submit to be marked along with all of the other tasks that they have completed to date. So it's really key here that you provide the assignment at the beginning of the unit so the students can produce and adhere to the tasks on a weekly basis to then produce their final presentation, evaluation, and their final project. So it's really important in terms of the global assignment, as you will see on there as well. There's guidance on how it should be presented into their digital portfolio. When we say digital portfolio, it's that presentation with the documentation there as well. There's a real emphasis here on task 4 in terms of the importance of critical evaluation, whether that is written or verbal, and that's differentiated and instructed by yourself. It reflects the entire journey of this unit from start, middle, and end. So that critical evaluation skills that the students will be developing is really important for task 4. Some real key points here for marking for task 4 and making sure you can access, and it's really clear what the students have presented to you within their portfolio. Looking at the depth and final evaluation and how well it reflects on the project's development and outcomes. And you must ensure that following the marking scheme, that all assessment criteria are covered within the portfolio. And that is guided through our Rubik's Cube on our mark scheme as well. So again, it's a real clear process of start, middle, and end, and really vital that the students get the assessment at the beginning of the unit. Moving on now to Fine Art, which is slightly different in terms of an approach to Fine Art as well. So the objectives of the Fine Art unit is really to encourage the expression of creative expression through traditional kind of art forms and understanding the art history and the critical theory behind that as well. Some key topics are kind of painting, sculpture, printmaking, art criticism, not in a kind of negative way, but that critique of the history of art and the traditional methods there, and developing kind of a personal artistic style for that individual learner. Some of the pedagogical approach really here for Fine Art, again, just re-emphasising that critical analysis there as well. So really to facilitate the delivery and any gaps in knowledge, and to work with individuals on that reflection. Scaffolding that knowledge and application within the lesson. So going from the Bloom's taxonomy of low order to higher order thinking as well. And there's real detailed guidance in the lecture guides that supports the student seminars and also tutorials, and the guidance for lecturers to do that. But it is a very exploratory discussions and kind of critique and that reflective practice. Again, encouraging that individual exploration and those key research skills, building that portfolio from the very first lesson to the very end of the unit, and whether that you deliver that in a short space of time or over the academic year. A real focus on critiques and discussions within the lesson to promote the kind of autonomy of the students and how they perceive certain elements there as well. We've really looked at an inclusive curriculum in terms of quite range of topics and discussions that should be promoted into the classroom, but also kind of controlled by the lecturer in terms of debate. And again, to really look at that ongoing assessment throughout the unit. The Fine Art Unit Assessment is a global assignment, again, available already on our course website, and it involves 2 tasks within that assignment. The first involves a critical and reflective portfolio, which is 60 marks, and the second task is an audio-visual presentation of 40 marks. Both contribute to the final overall grade, and again, this is a repeating global assignment from winter 2024 to autumn 2025. So again, providing the assignment at the beginning of unit so students can work through the task within their lessons and also kind of in their own time if they wish as well. So task 1 about that critical and reflective portfolio. So it's really important to encourage students to select a style, a movement, or an area that truly interests them, as well as enhancing the kind of production of their portfolio. I think you kind of know yourself, there's nothing more worse than not working on something that really interests you, and students can really kind of get stuck into looking at the research and development and the production of that. It's really important to guide the students in developing a detailed glossary and maintaining those developmental journals within the assignment that really just capture their critical engagement within the fine art and art history elements. And also from a tutor perspective, it's really important to support students in selecting and critically reflecting on kind of visual examples that relate to their chosen area of focus as well. Key kind of factors here when we're looking at the marking and assessment of task 1, we're looking at the evaluation and thoroughness of the accuracy of the glossary, assessing the depth of the critical thinking and analysis in the developmental journal, and reviewing the quality and relevance of the visual examples and accompanying kind of reflections in there as well. Again, it's very important to make sure students use their research skills in those primary, secondary sources, and they are referencing those correctly. So really encouraging students to gain that skill and really honing on that at the beginning of the first few sessions that you will deliver this unit. The second task is an audio-visual presentation that they will do to yourselves, and you will mark it accordingly. So it's really important to advise learners here to create a well-organised and structured and visually engaging presentation. We know it can be quite daunting for students at level 3 to present, but again, honing those skills and in reinforcing what they have to do at the beginning of the unit is vitally important. Really important to ensure students prepare, notes for them to take in, whether it's a script, whether it's something that they can refer to during the presentation, and a real, they've prepared those notes for the chosen artists and their social kind of cultural context. And within the lessons, it's really important to provide opportunities for students to practice their presentations. Now, a lot of students will do this externally at home or outside of the classroom, but it's creating those opportunities for individuals or groups to have the confidence and build that confidence in presenting in front of people. And I think that's a real skill that should be honed in on and developed at the early stages of the qualification, not just in these particular units as well. Some real key areas of assessment and marking guidance here, some key points is when you are looking at assessing the depth and analysis of the presentation and how well the student understands and conveys the influence of the social cultural context and artist work. So, you know, students can get nervous during presentations and kind of have that, some may have a lack of confidence in that as well. But it's really important we focus on what the students have produced, as well as what they do in the presentation. Look at the evaluation and quality of the slides as well, and ensure, you know, when you're looking at it, is it clear? Is it engaging? Is the presentation kind of well structured also as well? And final unit that we are going to move forward to now is the digital art unit. So in terms of the objectives for digital art and what we want to produce, we looked at a mastery of digital tools and techniques for art creation, integration of traditional art skills and digital technology. Some key topics that the learners will learn and apply are digital painting and illustration, 3D modeling and animation, and multimedia projects and kind of presentations from there as well. We encompassed many, many different techniques in this digital art, and we were very cautious not to overload kind of tutors and students in terms of those techniques. So we do focus primarily using particular software such as Adobe that you will have to acquire as a centre if you haven't already. But also we have also provided recommendations for free software that can be available for your staff and your students. But also, if you do use different software within your country, in your centre, you can also apply that there in terms of what they're looking for. But we focused on what globally is more recognised as particular skills on software within the digital art unit as well. So a kind of slightly, you know, cross collaborative approach in terms of digital art. You are looking at that skill development of the software package as well. So yourselves as tutors, making sure you have the knowledge and confidence in terms of delivering for the skill development of industry standard digital tools such as Adobe Creative Suite, 3D modeling software as well, and video editing tools such as Premiere Pro that are kind of widely utilised within industry as well. But mastery of the skill development is essential in that field. So we're not really focusing on the depth, but the breadth of these tools that will be utilised within this unit as well, to expose students to a range of software that is available for them to use on their projects. The key elements to this approach is the hands-on kind of practical exploration for students. You will see that some activities are designed in the teaching and learning materials to have at least a 30 to 45-minute exploration of purely one technique. And it's really important that that is guided and monitored throughout the session for the students by the tutor. It's making sure that they have the practice element there of hands-on, utilising the software, you know, making a mistake and taking that risk as well, which is really important, but knowing how to correct that as well. Again, it's that portfolio building right from lesson 1 straight through to the end of the unit, keeping a log of what they're doing, making sure everything that they produce in the lessons, they keep in their files to contribute to the overall assignment. And also, ultimately, for all of these units, they can develop that professional portfolio to take for interview or application to an undergraduate study as well. So idea generation is a real key on the digital portfolio in terms of peer support from the tutor and their own kind of idea generation as well. Cross-disciplinary learning, so looking at kind of different elements of fields such as kind of graphic design, animation, film. So they will be learning certain techniques in terms of that media or medium. And what that then does, it kind of broadens their skill set and kind of prepares them for looking at different career and pathways kind of at university as well. I think a key point in all of these units is that risk taking, is that not being afraid to share those ideas, but ensuring there is a supportive environment in those classrooms to maybe some ideas that might be different and away from the norm. But from my experience in the creative sector, that exploration and that creative approach for students to create that safe space in the lesson is vitally important from a pedagogical approach in the classroom. Utilising peer assessment, again, that encourage that reflective, process, the discussion, the constructive kind of critique as well. In some areas, from my experience in where I used to be in charge of, is that we use quite a lot of guest lecturers to support the process of this. So, for example, we use guest lecturers from the BBC, for example, that either would do a webinar or come and talk about careers. We would do guest lecturers from a graphic designer about what techniques and software they have approached. So it is kind of a good approach as a centre. If you have access to industry specialists and they can come in and guest lecture or give a webinar, we found that to be a really good, impactful experience for the students as well. That is a suggestion. It's not mandatory for centres to do that, but we have found from speaking to developers and industry specialists that really does encourage that exploration and support with their projects in the classroom also. I'm really looking kind of at that global perspectives as well, and the global approach of the cultural and contextual awareness of what they're producing in their portfolio as well. So some key points here in terms of assessment. It's based on a portfolio project, again, very similar to art and design, but obviously different mediums and techniques. It includes 4 tasks that contributes to 100% of the final grade, such as selection, experimentation, final outcome, and portfolio presentation evaluation. And again, it is a repeated global assignment from winter 2024 to autumn 2025. So some key elements here in terms of the task. Once again, I can't reiterate enough, students are presented with their assignment at the beginning of the journey of this unit, and as well as the others. So really emphasize here, kind of encourage students to explore a theme that allows kind of integration of various digital art forms. A real emphasis on conducting research again across different mediums such as photography, video, audio, design, and potentially 3D. Some key points marking for the kind of task 1 is looking at the creativity again, originality, looking at their sources, the depth and breadth of the research that they have done, and ensuring it encompasses multiple digital art disciplines, not just focusing on one. And really look at the idea generation process, making sure that they have a clear understanding of that, how to begin that, and focus on that as well. Task 2, again, experimentation and development, guiding students in the variety of digital tools and techniques, really encouraging them to reflect on it either at the end of each session that is built in, to the sessions that they take, or taken away as homework or extension task and bringing it with them to the next lesson. And again, as tutors, providing that rich feedback to encourage students in refining their projects as they move through with certain directions. Some key points here for assessment is looking at the detailed records that the students produce and their ability to kind of refine their ideas and come to fruition, and how well they kind of incorporate feedback from yourself, peer, and their own. Task 3 is looking at that final outcome. So really ensure that they've developed that. They have, from the initial project ideas to the techniques that they have completed and explored, and really looking at assessing the proficiency and creativity of that, and the intentions of what the student wants to produce is there in the reflective practice. And again, task 4 is a presentation evaluation, 15-hour supervised time within the lesson. So that could be 5 hours one week, 5 hours next week, 5 hours the week after. It could be that you want to do it over this course of 1 week, but I wouldn't recommend they do it obviously over 2 days. It's quite intensive, but the tutor must be in the room to answer maybe any small questions, but students should be then allowed to then create their final project with their presentation and evaluation. So 10 hours development for those students and kind of 5 hours working on their presentation to submit for their final piece as well. So some real general kind of notes for tutors really for these particular units. Consistency is key. So consistency in feedback in terms of whether that's formative, whether that's summative, and just making sure that it's catered for all in terms of assessment. Feedback is really important within these particular units and other units to provide timely and constructive feedback to help students improve before their final submission. Plagiarism, I can't stress enough in terms of making sure it's vigilantly checked for plagiarism, that all sources are cited properly and they're using the Harvard reference system and references appropriately. And for any students that may be struggling to offer that additional support, where students may struggle with certain aspects of the project, and it's really important that they have provided the assignment at the beginning of these units so they have clear understanding of what they will need to produce at the end of the unit, and they can refer back to it as well and use it as a guide for them as well. Again, that is to provide them with the global assignment, not the mark structure. That is for you to utilise only when you start marking the work the students have produced. So what we have provided for centres to date. So all teacher learning materials such as PowerPoint, lecture guides and student guides are already available, and they were available from the 30th of August on our VLE. And you will see them under the elective units. I believe they're right at the top of the elective units because they're alphabetical in terms of that as well. In terms of assessments, our global assignments are fully active now for winter and beyond, up to autumn 2025, and that is available under live assessments on our centre portal, which is Quartz. And what we can offer in particular for these additional units, amongst what we already offer, is additional support and training for centres that do want to start to undertake these units, either from now or over the next academic year. So that concludes the webinar from today. Thank you very, very much for joining. I hope that gave you a real kind of comprehensive approach of the purpose of the units, the approach, and also some guidance on the assessments there as well. We do have 15 minutes left in the webinar. So if anybody wants to ask any questions in terms of putting that in the chat, please feel free. And I'll wait for any questions to be asked in the chat before moving forward. Thank you very much. Just a note to say that this webinar and the resources with it will be available on our website following this webinar as well, as usual. There is somebody typing, so we'll just wait for questions to come through. We will provide in sample portfolios. However, in terms of the portfolio development themselves, they are very, very different because, as you can imagine, students select certain themes as well. This is a brand new unit development as well. So with our content developers, we'll provide in a sample of kind of what students have produced over the next couple of months as well, when centres are kind of delivering that as well. The one thing that we really don't want to, we don't want to provide a sample portfolio is because it's very subjective of that individual work. So what we don't want to say is that, you know, this is the best model answer or this is the best portfolio we've seen. We want to avoid kind of students working towards that and stumping that creativity and autonomy. But we will provide some sample portfolios for tutors as well in the coming weeks. I'll just give it another minute to ask any further questions. In terms of the question, could a student who already have a bachelor's or master's degree can enroll in this programme? Do you mean in terms of this particular pathway, a different specialism? I would take it on a case-by-case basis and look at our entry criteria as well. And it depends on the individual students. In terms of kind of student take this course, I would say yes. But it's a case-by-case basis, making sure they have the entry criteria. I would suggest and probably kind of wonder why, if somebody has a bachelor's or master's degree, to go back to level 3. But that's a discussion that you as a centre has control of with the individual student that's coming to you. It's just following our entry criteria and making sure that you are happy that the centre, the student's taking this course. That is what we're currently doing now. So what I would say is that UK universities already accept our IFD onto art programmes that we know of already without these particular pathway and units. So all university undergraduate courses are on a case-by-case process anyway, regardless of whether we have articulations with them. But we are constantly adding to our list of universities within the UK, and that is what we are currently doing with our current university articulations and beyond as well. There are also UCAS points attached to this qualification as well, which you can find on the UCAS website, which a lot of UK universities do use as well. But it is a case-by-case basis. Okay, if there are no further questions, I'm going to end the webinar there. Again, thank you very much for joining me this morning here in, I would say, a very rainy Manchester in the UK. I wish you a very good afternoon and an evening and a very productive rest of the week. Thank you very much for joining.